100,000 of you. That's what we just hit on Instagram, 100,000 followers. That's crazy. This is definitely not where I expected things to be at within the 6-month time period that I started doing things for myself and pursuing this full time. So let me start off by saying thank you. I don't really know any other way to repay the amount of people that have come along on this journey so far and been a part of this process, other than just like my greatest thanks. If you're just tuning in for the first time, hi, my name is Jared Thomas Tape. I'm a social documentary photographer and educator here in New York City, and you're watching my YouTube channel. Across my social media platforms on Instagram and Substack and TikTok and here on YouTube, I've created 6 different segments, each of which pertain to certain aspects of photography. Crafting a photograph, life through the lens, marks of the maker, the creative connection, tools of the trade, and field notes. Today's lesson or video kind of encapsulates all of those, but I'm going to stick it in the marks of the maker, which is all about my own personal philosophies, practices, and moments that have shaped my creative identity so that maybe you can learn something from them so you don't make as many fuck-ups as I did in my journey. This video is going to be just more honest conversation, not really as structured, but just going through the things that I've learned after 100,000 followers and the lessons that I've learned in both life, social media, photography, and everything in between. Let me start off by saying that nobody really tells you about what that feeling is when you achieve something that so many people desire. For me, at least, it doesn't really feel like anything. And that's not to say that I'm not appreciative of the fact that there are over 100,000 people that have, found something within what I'm teaching or what I'm doing and my work personally, that they feel the need to want to tune into it. It's just those things don't register in my brain as something that is a success, because that's not what I measure success in. And we'll get more into that in this video because it's something that I want to touch on. To me, in the grand scheme of things, that's just a number on my phone screen. It doesn't change anything in my regular day-to-day life. Is it cool? Absolutely. But it's not something that I'm jumping up and down at. I can't help but realize that things are different now. I started photography at an extremely young age. I started photography at 6 years old. The path of photojournalism has just kind of felt like a natural progression to me because I spent so much time out on the streets and I was so engulfed in everything going on that the natural progression of where I wanted my work to go was of something that had substance. Whether that be protests or parades, community events, communities as a whole, I wanted to be places that had an actual stake when it came to storytelling. Something that could mean something beyond aesthetics or geometry or the perfectly lit wall that's shaped perfectly for an Instagram feed. I just wanted to create something that meant more than that. One of my favorite quotes by Gary Winogrand is that he photographs something to see what it looks like photographed. To me, that's it.
I try to frame in terms of what I want to include. I don't think about pictures when I'm photographing. I see life. We know too much about how photographs look, or pictures look, and it's the easiest thing in the world. It's natural to make those pictures we know. It's boring. You don't learn anything that way. You keep making what you know. So I try to deal with things. I've worked out my own way, I guess, to contend with that problem of being programmed about knowing too much about pictures. Well, when I'm photographing, often enough somebody will come up to me and say, "You're getting good pictures," and I don't know. I know that what I photograph is interesting. I haven't seen the pictures yet.
My goal isn't to prove my point of view or cultivate a brand, an identity for myself around something, but rather to find out, to be curious about the world around me. I think that is what pulled me into the line of work that I do, whether it be out on the streets shooting for my book over the last 5 years or in the middle of a protest or parade or something going on. that's impactful. But along these lines, social media has come about. And what I've learned is that, of course, the feed is not real. The feed is like a performance space. It's like a bunch of mirrors dressed up as windows. I've learned that you can post the most honest version of yourself or of a person, the most honest version of your work. And the algorithm's either going to amplify it or bury it under a whole entire slew of ads. Cartier-Bresson chased a lifetime of what he called the decisive moment, which he didn't even make the phrase up. He didn't really feel like it pertained to him. It was all kind of like a marketing scheme before social media was around, but still we attribute him to the decisive moment. It's that razor thin moment when form and meaning and truth all come together in 1/1000th of a second to create a frame that tells a story or that shows people what it's like to be in the moment. I've learned through social media and through these 100,000 followers that context within the image is crucial, but that the feed strips that context away constantly. Early on in my career, I played that game. I started to learn the rhythms fast enough. I did everything, the post times and the hashtags and the comment on 15 other people's posts right after you post type thing. The heartwarming captions and the whole bullshit. And to be honest with you, it works, but only to a certain extent. And that's because you grow, right? And people find you, and then your numbers start rising like it's a temperature chart, and every morning you're waking up and you're checking those numbers just to see a tiny bit of an increase, and you're, just constantly looking over analytics for validation. That's what I did. And when that validation starts to come in, I've talked about this before in other videos. I can't remember specifically which ones. I can't remember if they were a part of the Creative Connection or maybe they were a part of Mark to the Maker, but that validation from the external changes the way that you think about the work that you're producing, and it makes you feel as if, oh, I know that this is working, so I'm just going to keep doing this. And that's not what art is. Art is not for the pleasure of an algorithm or for the pleasure of creating something in hopes of metric gain. At least it shouldn't be. So here's what I've learned. Building an audience and building a community are two very separate things. And if you confuse them, it's going to hollow you out as an artist. Dorothy Lang said that the camera is an instrument that teaches people how to see without a camera. Now, of course, she's talking about the photographer in this sense. She's talking about how once you become accustomed to seeing the way a photographer sees, the world around you changes drastically. You can't help but notice things that maybe other people don't notice. But she's also talking about the viewer. She was expressing that a photograph has a unique capacity to change something within a viewer, to rearrange something within them permanently. Especially in that time period, photographs were not created to rack up saves. An audience watches, right? And a community participates. An audience just consumes what you make. A community is formed through conversation and the space in which you make that community happen. The friction between countering ideas or implications of what your art form means. One is transactional and one is like a living, breathing organism almost. And I think that the moment that I stopped trying to grab the attention of eyeballs, of everybody's views, and started to lean more into trying to gain trust with the people that I come into contact with, whether that be out on the streets or here on all of my social media platforms, is when not only, the follower count, of course, saw an uptick, but I feel like my work got better too because I had lifted myself from this restraint of thinking that I have to produce certain kinds of work in order to be successful, quote unquote, successful about what I wanted to do. If If I could create something that meant something to a smaller group of people that stuck with them, rather than create something for the masses that, was just entertaining, then I felt as if I was producing something of value. Which brings me to my next point of teaching, and I get asked about this a lot, like why or how, or all of the questions about why I am so interested in teaching photography. And I'm 26 years old. I've said this before. I know I don't have everything figured out. I know that for a fact. I don't think I'll ever have everything figured out. There's no way. There's so much education and information and ways of life for me to get more knowledgeable on. So I'm by no means a master. I'm 26 years old, but I've experienced an awful lot in my 26 years of life so far, and most of it has been the hard way. Photography has just kind of always been the constant. I knew that I wanted to be an educator when I was about 16 years old. And that's because before that, when I started photography, I was 6. By the time that I was 10, I got my first Nikon Coolpix from my mother, and I was already hooked. I was a full-fledged YouTube University student. I was watching so many videos online at the time about how to try and become a better photographer. But what I found was that all of the videos were about gear. They were all about the newest tech, the newest lenses and sensors and camera bodies, and Nikon versus Canon, and film wasn't even in at that point, and I was already shooting film, so there wasn't really this influx of information on how to shoot film, and I was just constantly trying to find something out there that would help educate me on how to become a better photographer that wasn't about the technology behind what this medium has to offer. And I think that even when I was that young, I understood that, I don't know if it's because I couldn't afford cameras. So I just worked with whatever I had. And so I think I found out really early on that a camera is just a fucking black box. It doesn't matter what you have, you just have to go out there and make images and continue. And I didn't have an outlet. So I was frustrated, and I just stopped going on YouTube altogether and instead checked books out from the library, which is when I got introduced to people like Vivian Maier and Joel Meyerowitz and Robert Frank and Robert Capa, Henry Cartier-Bresson, Diane Arbus. The list goes on and on and on. Edward Bertinsky, the list goes on, and that's how I got my education. All of these books taught me things about photography that no algorithm even today has taught me about life and about how to compose an image and about photography at its best regard. I read about photographers talking about failure and how you're going to fail more times than you're going to succeed, which I'm sure I'm going to say again at some point in this video. It's so much harder than a lot of people think, and if the alternative is quitting, then I'd rather fail 100,000 times over and over again if it meant that at some point I could make something of value and of purpose. And reading that when I was like 13, 14, 15, 16 years old throughout my youth just kind of solidified that this is what I wanted to do. And I was certain of it, which is why I started YouTube almost 10 years ago now. And then I went off to university. I went out to San Francisco to start an internship. I was completing school online, and what I found was kind of just as disheartening, that it was a lot of the same conversations about tech and about how to become a professional. One of the required classes my freshman year of university was a Photoshop 101 class. I have no interest in Photoshop whatsoever. I don't use Photoshop today. I don't even have it downloaded on my computer. But I was required to take that class. And I don't want to say that my education was entirely a waste. There were moments and professors and some points of contact within online chat rooms with other photographers and artists that did shape, who I am today. And throughout my time at university, I just kept thinking about all of the photographers that came before me that didn't have a syllabus to tell them exactly what we're going to be studying, and have conversations about f-stops like they're symbolic, or have to worry about lighting courses. They just went out and they just fucking did it. And I started to get, for a lack of better words, angry a little bit at, I had all this education that I paid a premium for, and I feel like I could have just continued, getting late charges at the library for my education. And so I did some digging, and I thought about what I wanted, like what I really wanted from the time that I was like 13 years old, was to have somebody that could just tell me that these are the things that you should be studying, that these are the things that you should be doing as somebody that's interested in creating a life out of art and a life out of photography specifically. I just wanted somebody to sit me down and be like, this is it. It's not the tech. It's not spending thousands upon thousands of dollars to go get an education, when the best education that one can have is real life. I didn't even need them to be like the world's greatest photographer. I didn't need them to be a Gary Winogrand or, like a Walker Evans or, all these huge big wig names. I didn't need that. I just needed somebody that's a little bit further down the line than me, that's willing to turn around and extend a hand to help bring me to the next point in my life. And I just kind of thought, well, fuck it. If nobody's gonna do that for me, I want to do that for somebody else, because I've made so many mistakes in my life, whether it be personally, fucking financially, artistically, socially. And if I can be that for somebody that's interested in creating a life around this medium to help elevate what they want to do and show them that things, although they're extremely hard, don't have to be an uphill battle all the time. And so that's why I created the YouTube channel, and I started posting on Instagram, and started delivering these hot takes that kind of go against the norm of what a lot of the education in the online hemisphere of photography is. You may look at me now and be like, he's found his way. And in a way, I'm much more confident in who I am as an artist, but I'm still lost 96% of the time. I just happen to have left some breadcrumbs for me to follow back. I'm still shooting in the dark ahead of me, you know what I mean? So when I started to grow online and like really grow online, I felt that responsibility tenfold. It started to like kind of click just how much of a responsibility it is to be found. And I told myself a really long time ago, 6 months ago when I started this, that like the numbers don't matter. It's vanity, it's a distraction. It's not important to me. And I think that I was being a little convoluted or not really understanding what those numbers do mean once you reach that point. And I think in the position that I'm in now, I'd be lying to you if I said that I don't think about it. It's crossed my mind. And that's because it's not an egotistical way. I think that that's where maybe something has shifted a little bit in the way that I think about this, is the number is astronomical to me, but it's not like, oh, I'm the shit now that I have 100,000 followers. Instead, it's, no, there's a lot of people out there that are waiting for me to produce something of value that they stick around for, that they care about, that they support. And that is a responsibility. And it's maybe the first time that I've maybe understood what it means to be a real educator, in the sense that I'm responsible for people learning and being more educated. And that's a big responsibility because I want to do it correctly. And I think that that's because I care so deeply about this because I do feel like I wasted so much time on things that were trivial. And I know for a fact because I get DMs about it every single day that I try and answer as many as I can about people that are just starting in photography, whether it be street photography, photojournalism, fashion, concert, portrait, wedding, digital photography, that were all in the same exact position that I was in at one point, that ask me how they can get into this medium and start doing something with their work that they find value in. It's an unbelievable amount of DMs sometimes. And I think that the weight of that has started to accumulate, and it just makes me care even more about being the person for somebody else that I didn't have. It's like a feeling that I've never really experienced before, and it just makes me think about if I do the math on all of the times that I fucked up because I didn't have the resources, or I didn't have the proper education or mentorship to understand the proper steps on how to be not only just like a better photographer and artist, but what that means in a life, then I feel as if I probably would have been better off a long time ago. And I can't sit here and say that because I do think that everything happens for a reason and I'm exactly where I need to be in this current moment. But that doesn't mean that somebody else has to do what I did. Just because I went through all of this doesn't mean that the next generation has to as well. The numbers don't change the work, but they change what the work means. I know I just touched very briefly on new artists, and I'm going to speak in a more direct term because I feel like it's important, and I'm not going to sugarcoat anything. Like I said, a lot of DMs about starting this work, particularly street photography or photojournalism. And so this is going to be a little frank. It might sound a little harsh, but I want to be honest with you about it because it's important. If you don't absolutely love this, if you do not physically feel a sense of FOMO every time that you're unable to go out and shoot, if you're not the kind of person that sits in bed and lies awake at night about the shot that you missed that you knew was going to be a good shot, go do something else. I don't mean that to be discouraging, but if you don't care as deeply as you want anything else in this world, go do something else, because this is an extremely degrading, difficult, and saturated field to go into. Because what's on the other side of street photography or documentary photography, or even just art in general, it doesn't need to pertain to photography, any form of artwork. What lies in the path of success when it comes to art is rejection and anger and disappointment and 1,000 different ways to fail over and over and over again. The work of being an artist, particularly a street photographer or photojournalist, is brutal in ways that not a lot of people, I think, really discuss truthfully, especially if you want to make this a career. I understand that I'm in a position because of what I have done that allows me the opportunity to do the things that I'm able to do now. And I think that the kind of fucked up thing about social media in general is that you only ever see these success stories. You just assume that because people are able to do something full time, that there was never a point in their life where they were sacrificing everything to make that happen. And I know that I'll probably get some comments for about what I'm about to discuss. And I don't want to go on this weird memory lane journey of like, oh, woe is me. But I've been wanting to do this since I was 13 years old. I'm 26. I have worked nearly every job that you can imagine. Waking up at the ass crack of dawn at 4 a.m., bussing tables, line cooks, mostly in the service industry, bussing tables and line cooks and serving and managing cafe work, cooking, coming home at 3 a.m. for 6 nights out of the week, 2-3 jobs at a time, just trying to make rent and still trying to make something of my own artwork for years now. And I've only just now gotten to a point, literally within the last month, where I'm able to make something of myself to allow me the opportunity to do things in a much more functional way. There's been so much that so many people haven't seen except for the people closest to me that I have had to do in order to get to this moment right here. And even then, I don't feel like I've made it. So I know that I'm coming from a place of, quote unquote, this privilege of having this opportunity, but it didn't come from nothing. And whether you want to call that paying your dues, the reality of trying to make your work as an artist something substantial, or luck, that's the reality of a lot of artists. And any self-made artist will tell you that no matter how much time you have to put towards other things in your life, your main goal is always your work. You sacrifice sleep for it. You have maybe a day off, maybe 2 days off, and you spend that entire 2 days working on your artwork and trying to share it and build something. And so you begin to be much more efficient, which is going back to that sense of obsession. You have to be almost delusional in your pursuit of your own artwork, that no matter what you have to do in order to make something, you'll go one step further. To get back to photojournalism and street photography, on your 2 days off that you have, on your day off, it requires long hours. Usually I walk about 15 to 20 miles a day whenever I'm out shooting. It requires a lot of money sometimes, whether it be film production, buying a digital camera for photojournalism. There's an upfront cost and a lasting cost, subscriptions. All of these things add up. It's an expensive medium to be a part of. But if this is all that you think about, if this is the first thing that you think about in the morning and the last thing that you think about when you go to bed at night, then stay. If you feel genuinely, almost physically connected to the world around you and the people within it when you're walking around with a camera, and you struggle to do the same without your camera, then stay. If you have that sort of grit that doesn't really require any sort of external motivation to do the work because the work matters more than anything else, then stay. If you understand, not just in your head, but like in your bones, that you're gonna fail 100,000 times or more before you ever produce something that succeeds, and yet you still do it because you feel like if you quit, a part of you would die, then stay. But I think that the biggest thing that is a telltale sign that you should stay within this is if your world is more expansive than the medium that you are in. If you read literature and psychology and philosophy, sociology, you study anthropology and painting and music and understand rhythm and sculpting, if you're interested in the full breadth of human expression across every form that human expression has ever taken, then you'll succeed, because especially within street photography or photojournalism, this medium is not a practice of the technical, but a practice of humanity. One can't photograph this world honestly if one doesn't, at least at the bare minimum, try and study what this world has to offer and what the people within it have to offer and how we live. You have to understand that the streets or the world is not going to welcome you with open arms. Come here, my son. I'm so glad that you've taken the opportunity to look deeper inside. No, it's going to shut you the fuck out. That's what's going to happen. It's going to be hard and difficult, and it's going to ensure that it gives you an even worse day on top of an already shitty day. That's how this is going to go. But what you'll come to realize is that all of it is a gift. I know that I view it like that. That all of the experiences and the emotions of the people and the world around me, the tragedies and the good times, the bad times, and being able to notice these things and feel connected to them. And even if I don't necessarily understand them myself, be able to feel empathetically about them so that I can place myself in somebody else's shoes, which I feel like is just something that doesn't happen that often these days. You'll come to realize that this gift that's been bestowed upon you through the act of refusal to give up, to look at the world and the people within it closer than anyone else would really enjoy to, that it'll reward you and you'll start to understand more about people, and not just that, but yourself, what makes you tick. You grow to understand behavior more, and it's unlike any other feeling that I could describe. It's like a complete oneness almost. And I know I'm getting into like the frou-frou, you know, like the it's a wazy, it's a woozy. But there's no other way to really talk about it. That's just kind of like how it is. So I guess that's what waits on the other side, but only if you want it bad enough. Only if it's something that you desire more than anything else. That's what makes somebody a great artist, is the desire in the face of all the adversity in front of you. Speaking of adversity, I kind of want to talk now about the cost of being seen. And that cost of being seen, it's not in the same sense as like working a blue collar job, you know, like laying pavement, you know, things that my father's done his whole entire life. That's a different kind of exhaustion. It's physical, and of course it's mental, it's in the knees and the back, and you feel that exhaustion. But the one that I'm talking about, especially, I'm sure many creatives probably feel this way. There's a specific kind of exhaustion that happens to a creative brain, especially in today's time where there are no more artists, just artists, because we have been conditioned and almost forced into being a jack of all trades. And somewhere within that last decade, that expectation of what it means to create a fulfilling life as an artist has shifted drastically without our sort of consent. And of course, it wasn't necessarily some hotshot bigwigs coming around in the industry all sitting around a cauldron saying chants about how everybody is going to have to be more than just an artist. It's just kind of been the natural progression of how things have turned out, unfortunately. And it's something that is never going to change. Now, the baseline for any working photographer, and again, any working artist, is you have to be your own content coordinator, your own marketer, your own writer, publicist, agent, videographer, editor, outreach coordinator, brand ambassador, all of these different things that if you were a part of a corporate team would all have their own separate teams, but it's all come down to the singular person. And all of it for free. Swag. But the art form is not incidental to this arrangement. The art form is the raw material that the algorithm runs on. I've made a couple articles about this and how I've seen this specifically within the photography industry, and it's no small thing. What I've noticed is that this is a generation of technically proficient photographers that are exquisite at creating imagery for the feed. Images composed for the thumbnail or the vertical rather than for the story. And I'm not going to get into all of this again. It's one of my most controversial takes. I still heavily believe it though. It's my belief that the decisive moment has been replaced by the monetizable moment, and that the long, patient, accumulative, it's a big word for Elmo, accumulative practice of learning to see the years and years of bad frames and shitty photographs that we all take has been compressed into infographics and bite-sized content, all for platforms that reward immediacy over depth. And I think one of my greatest arguments for this is Gary Winogrand or Vivian Maier, both of which shot hundreds of thousands of rolls of film. Vivian Maier never seeing very many of them. Gary Winogrand dying with thousands upon thousands of undeveloped rolls of film. That frequency, that desire to shoot as much as they did without ever really needing the satisfaction, the quick validation, was not for optimizing engagement. And I think that what this has done for photography is impartial so much as it is for human beings in general, about life in general. What concerns me more and what keeps bringing me back to criticizing these types of algorithms or engagement cycles and the way that so many of us kind of conduct our personal lives as it pertains to the creation of artwork or content is because of what it's done to human nature and all of us as a whole, to the sort of fundamental properties of how we move through the world and why. Now, the need for human validation and human connection is not something that we should criticize in general. I am not above this. Since the dawn of humanity, people have needed that connection to have value placed into their being, whether it be a craftsman or an artist. Connection is survival, and recognition is like oxygen. There's nothing shameful or small about the desire to be seen. The problem is that social media has taken that desire or almost necessity of human connection and industrialized it. It's built an entire attention economy on the back of it. And they've sort of shoved this dopamine lever and then called it a creative platform. And so what you get at scale is not community. What you get is performance. And most importantly, what you start to see is that there are people that understand the performance. And they understand that distorting their behavior, that the most extreme versions of themselves generate that notoriety and create sort of outrage or content that's strategically designed for engagement. And so we've created a slow replacement of genuine feeling with the simulation of feeling. And I say all of this knowing that I am a part of it. I think that I got multiple DMs and multiple comments on a few of my articles that I've written, a couple emails, strongly worded emails, comments on my Instagram and YouTube that criticize me for pointing these things out. And I think that the problem is that they believe that maybe I am above it, but I'm very certain in my place that I am an active participant in it, as we all are. I am not above it in the slightest. It's just that what I've come to realize sitting inside of this contradiction is that there is no opting out. These tools are not going anywhere. To completely rid yourself of social media as an artist is to shoot your career in the foot before you even take a step. If you have something of value in your work that you believe is of value, not what anybody else believes, but if you believe it, something true, vulnerable about the world that you want to put out into the world, not for egotistical purposes, not because you desire the limelight, you yearn for popularity, but more so because you crave that human connection and that attention that is able to bridge the gap between our fellow people, then learning to use these tools and these algorithms and these platforms is not a knock on your integrity. It is an unfortunate case of understanding that these are the contemporary terms and conditions of creating a sustainable artistic life. It is a very unique term and condition that our generation is facing for the first time, as we are kind of the pioneers of the great westward expansion in social media, as we have this sort of utilitarian colonial older generation that is pushing these AI integrated artistic I say very lightly, technologies. It is our job, our responsibility as this generation of artists that have had to navigate these things to not be overcome with the decisions of the older generation that have had all of the most luxurious and glorious moments in artistic history to then silence us. It's our responsibility to learn these things and then use them to our advantage, because they're not going anywhere, and neither should your work. What was once practices across mediums of artwork, a sort of solitary endeavor, has become one of a sort of expected vulnerability, a performed access to the internal. This is true for both the artist and the art. I think in terms of engagement, a lot of things that do really well are behind the scenes. I've talked about this. I'm going to be talking about this in a future article about how people nowadays are much more interested in the life of an artist rather than the final presentation of the artwork. And that's because people love a story. People love an underdog. People love to understand the process. And when you're showing that process, whether it be the process of your artwork or the process of your life, they can latch onto something and build within it and see themselves in your work or in your ethics. And it creates a connection between the artist, the artwork, and the viewer that simply just seeing a finished product with no explanation just doesn't communicate. But that's created a pressure that is undeniable. I know that I feel it. I'm sure that many struggling new artists feel the pressure to perform, to be the jester of the court, so to speak. However, the answer that I keep finding myself coming back to is not rejection, but responsibility. If you want to be known, and again, there is nothing wrong with wanting to be known. That's not vanity, but just pure humanity. It's the same impulse that thousands upon thousands of years ago drove the first human beings to place their hands on a wall that would be remembered far after they were here. To be remembered, to be seen, is not vanity, but a desire within each and every one of us to make an impact on one another. And so it's a responsibility to carry that, and to carry that understanding as it pertains to social media. And what I've learned in this process is that the community that you build is not an audience that you perform for, but a group of people that have decided on their own, one way or another, that what you share with the world connects to them, means something to them, is of value to them, that what you produce is worth seeing. And so that decision that they make as a part of your community deserves something in turn that is very real. And that realness is not content or a strategy. They don't deserve some fanatical performance of who you really are, as it pertains to artists, if that is your thing, because people are unable to understand nuance. Of course, there are characters, there are performance artists. That is a form of artistry. I understand this. I am talking about, you know what I'm talking about. If you don't, c'est la vie. What your community deserves that's real is the real work that you are genuinely interested in, that you value, the reasons why you started. And as you grow, maybe as a person, but maybe in terms of metrics, the numbers will change you. I won't pretend otherwise. I've already said it, and I told you I was going to be direct. They will change you. But it shouldn't change what you make or why you make. That is the only way through. We are at an unfortunate point in humanity where none of us are above the machine, especially here in the Western world. I know that there are different ways of life. Some people may live off grid. I'm thinking in the most extreme terms because unfortunately we are also at a point where everybody has to think in extremes. Regardless of where you are at in your position in life, whether you are in the mountains of the Appalachians or thriving here within the city of New York, all of us live under the implications of the machine. That is just the reality. There's no way around it. So, what do? Well, my fellow artists, in turn we must press through it with your hands on the vessel of your medium, with your reasons intact in your eyes, still pressed forward through truth in what you desire as an artist. Now, I'm a photographer. I am a camera, but I want to be inclusive of all forms of art. So this has nothing to do with the specificity of photography. It is pertaining to all art forms. Let me be clear. You are not behind. You are not failing. Every artist that you've ever loved, every novelist that you have read their wonderful pieces of literature that have stuck with you through every desperate time in your life that you refer back to whenever you need something to lift you up. All those words that they have created that mesh so beautifully in front of you on the page. Every movie and film that you have seen that has changed something in you fundamentally, that has made you feel seen or heard or helped you experience something about your own life. Every single one of those artists were in the same position that you were in at one point. All of them have spent years, sometimes decades, sitting in the unknown, working without any sort of validation, making without an audience. That period of time where you feel like nothing is fucking working out. You know what I mean? It's just like you're just putting everything out in the world and you're not receiving anything back. That is not an obstacle between you and the work. That is the work. That is where things get made. We live in a moment that has made this harder to hold on to than any other generation before us. The visibility of other people's success is total, constant, and everlasting stream of comparison from where you are and where somebody else is. The gap between somebody else's success and your own success has never felt more tangible, more measurable, more public than now. We can all see in real time somebody else's success growing in ways that kind of fuck with our heads. And so we come to the conclusion that what we must do is something similar to them, that you're not understanding a strategy, that you're not being optimal enough, that you don't have the perfect workflow that helps you create virality. We construct versions of ourselves that reward this sense of immediacy and dictate how we live our creative lives. As somebody who has now gone through it, there is a formula. I won't sit here and lie. If that is what you desire, to be known for nothing else but virality and chasing trends, then by all means, you can do your own research on that. I'm not going to sit here and lay it out for you. And the reason why I'm not going to is because I know what the end of that road feels like, and it's hollow. It doesn't feel like success, it feels like momentary progress. And that's disheveling to the artist. And that progress will accumulate, of course. Your numbers will go up, your metrics will go up. People might engage more with the type of things that you put out, but how much of it is really who you are, what your work is, what you started this whole journey of living an artistic life in the first place? How much of it is known for you, and how much of it is known for your virality and your trends? If we're speaking in terms of true artistry, the people that desire to be known not for who they are specifically, but what they can provide to people, the feelings that they can contribute to one another. I don't really know many artists that desire virality more so than understanding. And that's what chasing metrics does. It creates this false sense of progress that when you look back on your work, you think about legacy and what you have offered your cohorts and your community at the end of your life. How much of it was actually true to you? And how much of it was for performance? The work of the artist is something unquantifiable, almost fate-like, destiny-like in a way, where it can only come from you. Humans have been creating artwork for generations on generations, way before platforms and algorithms and all of the things that we deal with today were even thought of, and we have survived as artists since before there were audiences in the modern sense. What I've learned throughout this process so far is that no matter what, you have to make the thing you can't not make. That is the only sustainable reason to do this in the first place. Not because it's a good content strategy or it fits well on a content schedule, but because you're the kind of person for whom not making the things that you desire to make is a sort of suffering, a restlessness, an incompleteness in your character and virtue of what you want to be. If that is you, if you recognize yourself in that description, if you can sort of feel it in your body rather than understand it as a concept, then I will be the first to tell you that you are already a working artist. The social validation does not make you a working artist. It is something that you feel within you. The work comes first, always. The recognition, the metrics, and everything else that we have deemed as necessary all of the time will follow on their own time. Show love to your community because they show love to you. Show up for them the same way that they show up for you. Whatever that size of community is, reply to the comment. Take the time out of your day to reply to the person that spent 5 minutes to write you about what your work means to them, what they'd love to know, and why they follow you in the first place. Behind every DM and follow is a person that found something within your work that connected with them, and they took the time out of their days to let you know that. The community that you build in the slow years, when you're first starting your journey, the ones that have been with you since the start, when it was a lot harder to find out who you were and what your work meant, are the ones that'll be there throughout the entire journey. And I don't know, it's my obligation to, at least I think it's my obligation and your obligation if you get to the point, to support them. And even if you don't make it, quote unquote make it, to the algorithmically approved status of thousands upon thousands of followers, still create the work for you, not the validation of others. Believe in the work when nothing external validates its life. The difference between an artist that endures and one that burns out is not talent. It's almost never talent. It's whether the reason to keep going lives inside the work and inside the artist or outside of it. If the reason lives outside of it, then the algorithm owns you. You are one with the machine. And eventually, the algorithm and the machine will stop rewarding you because it always does. That is the nature of the algorithms and the machine. Then your reason will disappear. But if the reason is internal, in the necessity of making something, in the way that the work asks something of you that nothing else does, the nothing that an algorithm or machine or platform will do that can take that away from you. I still don't entirely know what it means to have 100,000 followers. I will be honest, I've been thinking about it all morning, honestly. But here's what I keep coming back to. The number is not the thing. It's never been the thing. It's trivial in my mind. Because the thing for me has always been about photography, about artistry, about understanding people on a more human level and human connection, and assuming that I'm just the dumbest fucking guy in the room all the time and being okay with that because I want to experience things that I've never experienced before and experience culture and have an understanding of other people's lives, because I feel like it makes it easier for me to justify my own life. And I want to read good books and have the occasional bad meal and write and feel like I have been something of value through the way that I talk to people, the way that I meet people, the way that I photograph, and create something of value to people that are looking to be more artistic or understand themselves on a more basic level, so that they don't have to spend all of the rough years that I spent trying to figure my shit out, making the same mistakes that I did. That's my thing. That's who I am. That's what I came here to do. That's what I'm still here for. There've been a lot of times where I didn't think that I'd still be here. So everything else, the platform, the social validation, the metrics, it's trivial to me. It's not why I started to do what I wanted to do. Is it a good feeling? Of course. It's an amazing accomplishment. I already have a very hard time feeling accomplished in anything that I do. Taking a moment to see that all the hard work I did paid off. So it hasn't registered. I think I just, if anything, keep thinking about the 13-year-old version of myself that was frustrated at YouTube videos and dove straight into books. And I keep thinking about all of the people that reach out to me, whether it be a DM or an email or in person, that ask me how to get started in photography and their own artistic vision. And I've realized that this video in and of itself has been kind of less about reaching 100,000 followers on Instagram and more so about what that journey has looked like and what it's taught me about people and about institutions and technology and about myself and what it's like to try and pursue a creative career and life during this time period. And I know I'm rambling, but I think that I wasn't really expecting this video to turn out this way. I'm still figuring it out. Like I said, I'm 26 years old. I only know where I've come from. I have no clue where the fuck I'm going. All I can do is look backwards and try and extend a hand out to somebody else that was like me growing up, that just wanted to be of value so they don't have to waste so much time to create something for themselves and have a easier path. The clarity in a photograph doesn't always extend to the person that took the photograph. I think that much is true for who I am. Of course, I'm very certain in my ways upon certain things, but I'm shooting in the dark here most of the time. I'm often not very certain about many things, as hard as that might be to believe based on how opinionated I can be. But I am certain on the fact that my most cherished work is not the work that is validated online the most. I'm certain that the community that has circled this quote-unquote artistic journey, not the numbers, but like the actual people, is not necessarily something I could have anticipated, and I don't intend to treat it lightly. I hope to honor it and to be of value, of some sort of service. To everyone that has been a part of this entire thing and found this work from the earliest stages when I was at 3,000 followers, cranking out photographs and reels and everything, a thank you is so minute to what I wish I was able to present to you. It doesn't even begin to describe what I wish I was capable of describing, but it's all that I can really offer you right now. To all the newcomers, I also thank you in the same light. I hope that you continue to find something that you connect with, and yeah, it means a lot to me for anybody to be here and to connect with what I'm saying and what I'm teaching and what I'm producing in my own body of work. I don't know how to repay other than just trying to continue to make it worth it. I think that that's the entirety of it, really. This is what 100,000 people have taught me, and what the streets have taught me well before that, and what I hope that the next 100,000, if I'm so lucky, will teach me down the road. So I hope I stay worth it. I intend to try. So this is going to be it. I'll catch you on the next one. And thanks again.